In this video tutorial, we're going to use Ableton Live in order to remix some audio. We're going to take I Got a Spell on You by Eddie Johns as an original song, and we are going to cut sections out of it and create a new arrangement from those sections, ultimately creating One More Time by Daft Punk. Ableton has two views. We have the session view, and if we select using these tabs at the top right hand corner, this top one, this is our arrangement view, and it's this view that we are going to use for this tutorial. The first thing I'm going to do is remove the MIDI tracks, as we're dealing only with audio. So highlight the first track, press delete, and then again to get rid of the second one. So all we're left with are two audio tracks. The bars go from left to right, as you would expect and familiar with Logic or Pro Tools. On the right hand side you have your tracks and then your I/O. You can turn tracks on and off using these tabs here. And on the left hand side you have your library. Under Places we can add custom folders, so that's access to custom areas on our computer, and that's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to select Add Folder, and I'm going to select the folder that contains the original Eddie Johns track. In my case, I've got one called Remix Tracks, and press Open. This now appears within Ableton. It means we don't have to go outside of the software to find our audio. Everything can be done internally. If I select the folder Remix Tracks, I can now see the contents. So Eddie Johns, More Spell on You. I'm going to drag it in and put it right at the beginning. If I double click on this, on the name, it appears at the bottom as a sample editor. So I'm just going to expand this so we can see this a bit clearer. To zoom in, if you hover over the bars, it turns into a small magnifying glass. And if you click and drag the mouse up and down, it zooms in and it zooms out. And what I want to look at is right at the beginning. So I'm going to keep zooming and moving my mouse to the right so that I can zoom in on the beginning. When a piece of audio is inserted or imported into Ableton, it analyzes it and creates warp markers, and that's these yellow parts, these yellow points. Generally, Ableton is quite good at doing this, but it can make mistakes. And an example of a mistake is at the beginning here, where we have half a bar of silence before the first sound comes in. If we press play, let's press stop to take it back to the beginning and then press play, you can see that there's half a second or so silence at the beginning. And we want to remove that. If you hover over just above where the first sound, the first transient can be seen, you get a greyed out warp marker. We can double click this and it will turn it on. So we've now told Ableton that this is where there is a piece of audio that we want to use. And we're going to right click on it and tell Ableton to set 1.1.1 here. That's the first beat of the first bar. Now when we press play, it starts from that point. We can now remove this. Let's have a listen to the track. Some of that starts to sound quite familiar if you're familiar with the One More Time by Daft Punk. So we're going to start by building this up, and there's three main sections to this. The first one can be found on bar 13. So if I just zoom in on this and play from bar 13, that's the section that we want to cut out. From bar 13 to halfway through, represented by 13.3. To do this, it's quite simply click and drag over the area you want to cut out, then press Command and E to split the audio. This has now created a section cut out from the original that we can copy. So I'm going to press Alt and drag it down. So I've duplicated that section. If I want to listen to this on its own, I can turn the main track off, put the cursor just ahead of that section, and then press play. Spacebar will act as a play and a stop as well. So this needs duplicating. In One More Time by Daft Punk, this would play through twice. So with it highlighted, press Command and D to form two more versions of it. Let's have a listen to this. This last one needs extending so that it's more in line with the original version of One More Time, and it needs to be extended by what is a quaver, or an eighth of the bar. And that's section 1. We're now going to find the part for section 2. If I scroll back nearer to bar 11, and we're going to zoom in on this section here. And from 11.4.3 to 12.2 is going to form our second part. Let's have a listen to this. Let's turn this on. I'll turn this track off. That's the section we want to use. So I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to press Command and E to split it. I'm just going to zoom back out to make it easy to drop it into the right place when I make a copy of it. Holding Alt, and drag and drop. So if we turn the main track off and turn our arrangement track back on, let's have a listen to this. So that section can now be repeated 3 times. Select the first part, hold Shift and select the last part, and that selects everything in between. And then we're going to consolidate this. Press Command and J. It glues everything together and allows us to edit this and move this around as one piece. So we're going to duplicate this another 2 times. And now we need to get to section 3. Section 3 can be found at bar 14, and we're just looking at this section from 14 to 14.2. If we have a listen to that, sorry, put the main track back on, I'll put the arranged track back off. That's the section we want. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to press Command and E to cut it. And I'm just going to zoom out and make a duplication using the Alt key on the end. If we put the arrangement track back on. So we need to have this playing 6 times. So there's our first one. If we duplicate this a further 5 times now. So there's our 6 in total. Let's have a listen to that. For the last section, we need to duplicate this one last time, but we need it to be half the length. So if we zoom in over that section and we can quite simply just hovering over the top right hand corner, click and drag and reduce it to half the length. We now need the second section to repeat one more time at the end of this. Our second section, if you remember, was from 11.4.3. This part. So we need to copy that onto the end. Now let's have a listen to what we've got. And that completes the main part of that track. So if we hold Shift and click at the two ends, we can consolidate all of this together and put that at the beginning of our project. In Daft Punk's version, the track starts off without having very much bass in there, and then the bass kicks in. So I'm going to show you how this can be done very simply in Ableton as part of the remix process. We're going to duplicate this so we have two versions, both identical. So if we listen to it, and what we're going to do is filter out all the bass content of this first section and automate it to come back in on this section. We're going to use a very simple plugin for this. So if we go to Audio Effects on the left hand side and select EQ3, and we're going to drag it and put it on this track. So you very simply drag and drop. It then appears at the bottom. So this is our signal chain relative to the track that we've just put it on. So if we have a listen to what this would sound like with it on, I'm going to turn the low frequencies off. So it's this control that we're going to turn on and off. But we only want it to turn on at this point. The red line, the dotted line, and it becomes solid when you hover over it, is our automation lane. And whichever parameter has been selected down here appears in this section under the name audio, and this is our automation control. So we're going to automate the low on control of the EQ3, this button. At the point on bar 9 where the two sections meet, I'm going to hover over the track until the automation lane, until the line turns solid red, and click my first point. I'm now going to create a second point and drag it up so that it starts directly where that part starts repeating. If we go back to the beginning, things you can do at this point, add further effects, you can add additional sections, you can add MIDI information, so you may want to put another drum loop underneath this. Obviously Daft Punk have added a vocal sample on top of this as well. It's really up to your imagination and your creativity. But that's how to remix using Ableton.